It's been a lot of years, and lately I've been called a tech humanist, which I kind of like that one more than anything, because former to that, I was called a digital embalmer, which I don't think any girl likes. So tech humanism, I'm okay with. And then for a moment, I'm like, futurist. You know what? I'd rather be a presentist, I think, at this point. I'd rather be in the series of nows rather than be in the future. And I think it just says a lot right now of this wisdom of 25 years in the industry. But the net of that was I was a traditional fine artist and a glassblower sculptor, and then got on the box as an animator. So, 25 years of this world, I'm super proud of a lot of the communities I've worked with and the work that we've done that runs the gamut from, everything from gaming, from web, from mobile, from tablet, from wearables, obviously to theme park and theme attractions. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
We talked before the show about your experience using software that I was very familiar with here at Wavefront. People in Santa Barbara know Wavefront very well. And so that was, that was a few years ago. I'm curious your thoughts about your interaction with the technology at that time and what you could do and what you couldn't do and what you can do today.
Yeah. You couldn't tell a glassblower to get on the box and be an animator and convince them, right? So I'm going from Dale Chihuly and Pilchuck, and now all of a sudden I'm on your software, Mark. So the trying to translate the fact that I could blow a piece of glass, then animate a piece of glass, then give a piece of glass a whole other life and a story and a character was a really beautiful process that I didn't know at the time was going to be a repeatable process in everything I've done. So it didn't matter how low poly and how long the rendering was for the work we did back then. And everybody was trying to make perfect hair. That was all the big rage, We're in that again. And we've been in the 2.0. In the 1.0 version, we were doing it. In 2.0, we replicated it with social. Now in 3.0, we're doing it again in immersive. And it just, if one more person says I'm in the developer years, Kathleen, that's it. I'm like, I've been in the developer years for 25 years. It doesn't stop. So it's this constant state of learning, constant.
It was back in the day when we invented VRML, which seems like, it literally was 35 years ago, I think now. And, the dream we had of being able to create these environments is I think realized now. We have photoreal immersive environments that we can get into. And what I'm interested in is this idea of extended reality. And why don't you explain to the audience, because we've heard of augmented reality and we've heard of virtual reality, but I love your focus on XR. Why don't you help our lay audience understand what that is?
Yeah, in 2017, 18, I started talking about meeting your digital twin and what that meant. And aside from the content, we can get into what that means. I really felt that I had to take a step back and give everybody a 101 on just extended reality before we're talking about twinning ourselves. And so, at the time, extended reality is the umbrella. What sits underneath it is virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. But, that was going back to 2015, 16, and now people have used, maybe transmedia, people were saying back then, and then it became XR when we were doing virtual reality. And, now everybody's converging. So it's really mixed reality. Everybody's converging their, see-through, pass-through, how we look at worlds, how do we tap into not just a level of an immersive environment, but how do we have one foot in the real world at the same time? So extended reality is the umbrella that people have used, but, some people, depends who you talk to, might say it's a marketing term. So everybody can understand the same glossary here.
Do you feel that Facebook co-opted the metaverse?
I mean, it was definitely a provocative move, but I have good things to say about Facebook with a lot of good folks that are in there right now that have gone over. I kind of feel like, they've gone over to see what's going on the inside to make things right, because it's not just social media. We have a whole generation of 8th grade girls that have committed suicide because of the like button. So, this is a much bigger play, and we're blurring these lines along with AI on our interactions with people. And how do you even trust your gut anymore? So, it's a bold, provocative move, and they're going to have to live up to it.
So it sounds like, I don't want, I'll ask the question and not assume, do you have a utopian or a dystopian view of how this is all going to play out?
Some people are like, you're so Pollyanna, really? And I'm like, it's design intention. It's by intention. And that's by design. It's not that I don't see the dark side. It's not that I don't see it every day. I gave a talk more recently on Metaverse 101. And the folks that raised their hands in the room that said, you talked about everything, but you didn't talk about cybersecurity. And of course, these guys were 30 years government cybersecurity, and they were just ready to come down on all of you really have to protect yourself, especially in this wacky world of body shopping parts and AI and all the things that we're going to be doing with our likeness. So it's not that I don't see it. What do you choose to focus on?
Yeah. And that's a week-long talk, not a 45-minute keynote either, right? If you want to get into all of the things. I'm currently watching Westworld, which I think is just a wonderful view of the future. And I'm very interested in kind of the things that are there that the set designers have come up with. And I know you do a lot of this design. I'm really interested in how they've solved this one problem, which is around monitors and how do we see these generated worlds? Because I think that's a barrier for people. They don't understand. They think, oh, am I going to walk around with goggles? No. There are interesting ways. So it's very curious to me to watch production designers imagine the future. So I'm kind of thinking, you as an experienced designer, and that's part of what you do. How much fun is that part of your job, your work?
Well, let me take a step back on traditional experience design, UX experience and UX architecture, and then experiential marketing. Both three of these verticals use the word experience. And so it's been really a difficult last 2.0 to say experience design without UX coming up. And then you talk to a traditional theme park experience designers and they're like, UX people, you should be over here. UX people are like, experience designers, you should be over here. Meanwhile, experiential marketing is doing all the money, the brand activations, and getting it done quickly as a pop-up. So it's kind of a funny word as experience design. My colleague, and I have to bring her name up because so much of this narrative architecture conversation is the life work of Amy Jupiter, which I posted on LinkedIn today. And Amy and I have been in tandem on talking on this very subject. And the way this came about is I was at Disney, she was at Imagineering, and I was at WD Parks and Resorts Online. And, I think Bob Iger saw a unique moment and some of the folks took the opportunity to think about re-architecting the park with new technology. And I was sitting there in that first room. I since had left Disney while this went on to be 13 years of developing the Magic Band. But this was the first time that a UX team was embarking on an Imagineering effort. And so this was really, is this a data effort or is this a storytelling with data effort? So I inherently, coming from the gaming world, had thought with all the world building after 25 years that I've been part of and seeing, how come we're not using innate experience design from, the likes of Disney and others and using that framework in building gaming worlds. In the gaming model, in a game design doc, you've got a rewards-based leveling up behavior. Yep. That's not the architecture and framework that you're looking at with Disney. And Amy is so good in explaining that from a visceral human full senses point of view that I have been like dragging her over to say, you need to be in this world building metaverse world. And from her point of view, there is no difference. It's just a new technology with a new platform. From my point of view, it is a difference. You've got AI, you've got people knowing who you are before you walk into a room. You're storytelling very differently now. So this is our banter. This is what we talked about at AWE 2 months ago in Santa Clara. And we'll continue to banter this very idea.
I'm curious, if we think about a technology curve, right? Our early adopters and our late adopters and our early majority and late majority, the crossing the chasm curve. Where are we in this particular area that we're talking about? Because every piece has its own curve. Where do you think we are on that curve right now?
I used a metaphor once. I don't know if it's political or not to use it, but if I think about leveling up in like colored black belts, we're
Sure.
just at our infancy in this 3.0 immersive version of leveling up with colors, only to get in the next 5 years. I'm thinking 5 years is we're in the tools building years, is where we can at least get to a common understanding of color. And maybe, the whole idea is by 2045 and the singularity that we're all in and we all understand and we all get it. And are we black belts by that point? Much sooner do we speak the same language. But I feel like we're in the first 5 years of tools building of the possibility of three things: the world building part of this,
Right.
the avatar part of this,
Right.
and then the marketplace and the NFT marketplace of all
Right.
of this. All
Right.
three of those have their own leveling up, let's say.
So I took from that, because I'm a black belt, as it turns out, in Hapkido.
Then weigh in. Yes.
Yeah. So you're suggesting that we're white belts right now. And it makes me think of, Wavefront started in '84 when we couldn't do shaded polygons. We couldn't do texture maps. We couldn't do colored light sources. We couldn't do any of that stuff outside of the lab. And we were the first ones to be able to do that in something that civilians could buy, right? And so I remember each year at SIGGRAPH having we're the tool builders, right? And putting out, hey, we can do fog. And it was years before we could do hair and fur and clothing and water and all that. But at the very beginning, it's like, hey, can I have a red polygon, please? And can I create a seam between the two of them? So it feels like we're at that same time. And what was so just exhilarating about being a part of that was how much invention was happening all over the world. We were, the job was put a pixel on the screen. That's the job. And there was a Canadian way and a European, Parisian way and a Californian way and a Japanese way. Yet at the end of the day, there was still a pixel on the screen. Is that where we're at? We're at that very nub of a beginning.
Well, I'm standing on, what's the phrase? I'm standing on the shoulders of you, your giant. And, I was next gen in one way because I jumped in '94. And so you were already at this for a good 10 years, if that's right. So, and in '94, the challenges were different. I'll tell you, what's beautiful now is that while the polygon count is low just for real-time processing to get a real-time interaction, you have different kinds of interactions in world building. So you can forego the fidelity for a minute and really rest on the intimacy of, let's say, audio, or rest on the intimacy of human connection that isn't necessarily chasing fidelity. Because your world went VFX and it's all high fidelity all day. My world went gaming and nobody would touch us with the 10-foot pole, but we knew how to build worlds. And so we had different challenges. So that's why I say I feel like we're in the 1.0 of this 3.0, because we're dealing with a full 360 of so many factors and so many disciplines coming in. Same challenges. We're chasing.
One of the things that was interesting, like right off the bat for us at our first trade show, was NBC came to us. They were very, very, very ahead of the curve. And the next guy I talked to was the head of graphics at NASA. And the next guy I talked to was a forensic engineering firm that wanted to do legal reconstructions of product failure. So we had three verticals wanting to use the same tools right off the bat, which makes me think right now what's very interesting about this new technology is how it's going to affect healthcare, how it's going to affect so many aspects of our, probably more than we can imagine. With that, where do you think what's most interesting to you? Let's say that outside of entertainment and marketing and consumerism.
Yeah. So I do work on projects in healthcare. I mean, I get called for all kinds of projects because, there was a moment it was all media and entertainment. It's no longer that. It's no longer computer science. It's computational thinking in every vertical. So, we've now crossed the beauty of media and entertainment, being able to tell something succinctly and tell it well. That should get carried over to all verticals. So when I'm working in healthcare, I'm dealing with the memories of my being at IBM Innovation, which was, politics and not being able to leverage maybe, any patents for a long period of time. But in this particular client's case, I was tasked with transitional care. How do you get from a patient from their home to a facility? And how do you do that with immersive solutions? Well, I sit on the advisory board of holoride, which I don't know if you mentioned, I didn't share it myself earlier, but holoride was a spinout from Audi Innovation. So think VR in your car. Our big launch is in the fall, and Jesse Shell and Shell Games are our big content partners, and all the Audis, there are hollow-ready cars coming off the assembly line as we speak at Audi. So what that means, we originally tied this to a Pico device to do the MVP for this, but now we're using the HTC Flow glasses to be able to sit in the backseat of your car and track real-time open map data and car data at the same time that you're having an experience. So you're not having a divorced experience in the backseat of the car. And again, this is passenger entertainment only. This is with the idea of autonomous vehicles in the future. But right now, the idea that everything tracks with precision data, there's many things that we could solve. So if somebody was had agoraphobia, or somebody needed an intervention and you needed to get a senior perhaps from their home to a facility that wouldn't go otherwise, you could have telehealth and teledoc through the entire process, wearing glasses and walking through the entire experience and getting somebody prepped for what's going to happen when they get to their destination, as an example. So things like being able to be on the board of such an innovative company in media and entertainment, but seeing the value of where this is going to go. That's why I sit at this cross section of narrative architecture in a very different format.
Last question for this section is, there are some industries that feel like they lead in technology, and you can kind of look to them and you're like, oh yeah, they kind of sorted it out. And then some are the laggards. Who are the ones that are leading right now that we may not be aware of?
Oh, I mean, mapping software, mapping companies right now, because of my interest in digital twinning and twinning of cities and all of those levels, whether it's Esri or other mapping data. I mean, everybody's taking a shot at how we're twinning everything down to a lamppost, to a street sign, and back to our person. This whole thing is being twinned. What comes out of my mouth is body shop separate than what my eyes look like, what my dance moves look like, how I just move my hands, all of that in the free marketplace, pull and grab and cut and assemble. So it's a fascinating, so the map side, on the world building side would be map builders is where I look at right now. And I'm not saying less interested in the marketplace. Of course, the NFT marketplace can't exist without us as world builders and avatar creators. But it's interesting. It's, everybody's rushing to buy land in the metaverse because that's where they think the dollar is. But the human experience of urban planning and developing community and what that means, we have an opportunity to be so much better. And this is where I'd get into object design, of how each object should be infused with indigenous wisdom or tied to the 12 UN or 17, I think, UN sustainability goals. Every object in these worlds that we go in should be tied to a science. So they're persistent, so we can see in front of ourselves this time. So yeah, there's a lot I could go on.
These are indeed exciting times.
Yes, in a big way.